Imagine waking up on your 1000th birthday. You have seen empires rise and fall. You watched the first city on Mars take shape. You remember a world before the internet, before smartphones, before electricity itself. And you are still here, not as a ghost, not as a memory, as a living, breathing person, looking out at a world that has changed 1,000 times over. What if human life didn't have to end at 80 or 90 or even 100? What if the ceiling was not biological at all, but a story we told ourselves because we had never dared to imagine anything else? For most of human history, living past 40 was a luxury. Then medicine arrived, and sanitation, and antibiotics, and suddenly the average lifespan doubled. We treat aging as inevitable, the way we once treated disease. But what if aging is just another problem? A problem with a solution. Today, some of the brightest minds on the planet believe that extreme longevity is not science fiction. It is a question of when, not if. So let us ask the real question. Not whether we can live to 1,000, but what happens to us if we do? Because the answer is far more complicated, far more beautiful, and far more terrifying than you might think. To understand what a 1,000-year life would mean, we first need to understand where the science actually stands. Aging, as we now understand it, is not a single process. It is a collection of cellular failures that pile up over time. Your DNA accumulates damage. Your telomeres, the protective caps at the ends of your chromosomes, shorten with every cell division. Your cells stop dividing and become what scientists call zombie cells or senescent cells. They do not die. They just sit there, secreting chemicals that inflame and damage the tissue around them. For decades, we accepted this decay as the price of being alive. But in the last 20 years, that assumption has been shattered. Researchers have extended the lifespans of worms, flies, and mice by significant margins. Some have used senolytics, drugs designed to clear out those zombie cells. Others have experimented with reprogramming cells, essentially turning old cells young again using a set of proteins called Yamanaka factors. Then there is the work being done on telomere extension, on metabolic pathways, on the role of NAD in cellular energy. None of this means a pill for immortality is right around the corner, but the trajectory is unmistakable. Each year, we understand the machinery of aging a little better. Each year, the line between biology and engineering blurs a little more. Now extrapolate. If we can extend a mouse lifespan by 30% and then refine that technology over decades of iterative progress, and then combine it with gene editing, nanomedicine, and artificial intelligence-driven drug discovery, the upper bound starts to move, not to 120, not to 150, but potentially into the hundreds. And if the hundreds are possible, then 1,000 is not madness. It is just math, played out over a long enough timeline. The real question is no longer can we, it is what happens to everything else. Let us start with something almost nobody thinks about when they fantasize about living forever. Money. Right now, the entire global economy is built around a simple assumption. You work for about 40 years. You save. You retire. You live off your savings for maybe 20 years, and then you die. That model, the three-stage life of education, career, and retirement, is the foundation of how we plan everything. Pensions, Social Security, investment portfolios, insurance, real estate. All of it assumes you will work for a while, rest for a shorter while, and then leave the stage. Now imagine you lived to 1,000. Suddenly, retirement at 65 means spending 935 years without an income. No pension system on Earth is designed for that. No savings account, no matter how well invested, can sustain a person for nearly a millennium. The entire concept of retirement collapses overnight, but the implications go deeper. If you are going to live for 1,000 years, the idea of a single career becomes absurd. You might be an engineer for your first century, a farmer for your second, an artist for your third. You might reinvent yourself 5, 10, 20 times. The notion of going to school once in your 20s and using that knowledge for the rest of your life becomes laughable. You would need to return to education again and again, not because you failed, but because the world moved on and your old skills became fossils. Think about what that does to labor markets. If people live for 1,000 years, job turnover based on death and retirement slows to a crawl. Positions do not open up. Young people, and by young we mean anyone under 200, would struggle to find opportunities because the people ahead of them never leave. The economy would need to be completely restructured around continuous retraining, mandatory career cycling, and some form of wealth redistribution that does not currently exist. Wealth accumulation becomes another problem. If someone can invest money and let compound interest work for 300 years, the math becomes staggering. A modest investment growing over centuries would produce fortunes that dwarfed anything we have seen. Without intervention, a small group of ancient, impossibly wealthy individuals would own essentially everything. The gap between rich and old, and young and struggling, would become a chasm so deep it could tear civilizations apart. Retirement, as we know it, would not just change, it would vanish. And in its place, an entirely new economic philosophy would have to be invented from scratch. Now consider the most obvious and most uncomfortable consequence of 1,000-year lifespans. People do not die, or at least they die much more slowly. Right now, the planet has a rhythm to it. People are born, they live, they pass away, new generations arrive, and the total population stays within a range that, while growing, has a certain flow to it. Death is the release valve. It makes room. If people suddenly started living to 1,000, that release valve would all but close. Imagine a world where almost everyone born in the last 3 centuries is still alive. The population would not just grow, it would explode. The math is simple and brutal. If death rates plummet and birth rates stay even modestly positive, the population curve goes vertical. Within a generation or two, the planet would face numbers it simply can't support. We already strain to feed 8 billion people. We already drain aquifers, burn forests, and push ecosystems to the breaking point. Now multiply the population by 3 or 5 or 10 and ask yourself where the food comes from, where the water comes from, where the energy comes from. Overpopulation is not a hypothetical thought experiment in this scenario. It becomes the single most urgent crisis in human history. There are possible answers, of course. Colonization of other worlds, Mars, orbital habitats, underwater cities, vertical farming engineered at scales we can barely imagine, fusion energy powering desalination plants that turn oceans into fresh water. But all of these solutions require breakthroughs that do not yet exist, deployed at scales that would make the Industrial Revolution look like a school project. And there is the darker option. If people will not die naturally and the planet cannot sustain them, then birth rates would have to be controlled. Not gently, not with tax incentives, with hard, enforceable limits on reproduction. Imagine a world where having a child is a privilege granted by lottery or by application, where the fundamental human drive to reproduce is regulated by the state because there is simply no alternative. That is not dystopia. That is arithmetic. A society of thousand-year-olds would have to choose between population control so strict it would make current policies look libertarian, or expansion into space so aggressive it would consume the resources of an entire solar system within centuries. Both options are staggering, and both would reshape what it means to be human. Here is something the longevity optimists rarely talk about: your brain. We tend to assume that if the body can be repaired indefinitely, the mind will follow, but the brain is not a hard drive. It is not an infinite storage device. It is a biological organ with physical limits, and those limits might matter more than anything else in this entire conversation. Think about your own life right now. How clearly do you remember being 5 years old? How much of your 10th year can you recall in detail? Even now, at 30 or 40 or 50, vast stretches of your life have already blurred. Faces fade, names slip, conversations dissolve into vague impressions. That is not a flaw. It is a feature. Your brain is designed to prioritize what matters and discard what does not. It constantly writes and rewrites, compressing and discarding, making room for what is new and relevant. Now multiply that by 1,000 years. What happens to your memories after 200 years? After 500? After 800? There is no scientific consensus because no human has ever had to find out. But based on what we know about neural architecture, the picture is not reassuring. Your brain has finite capacity. It is estimated to store somewhere on the order of a few petabytes of information. That sounds enormous, and it is for a normal lifespan. But over 1,000 years, you would accumulate more experiences than any biological system could possibly retain. Early memories would degrade, not just fade. They would be overwritten, compressed beyond recognition, or simply lost. You might remember the broad strokes, the century you lived in, the names of the people you loved most, but the details, the textures, the moments that made those years yours would erode like coastline under a relentless tide. You would become a person with a beginning you can no longer see clearly, a middle that is mostly reconstruction, and a present that is the only thing you can truly trust. Some researchers speculate that the brain might adapt, neural pathways might reorganize, new storage mechanisms might evolve over centuries of extended life. Maybe, but it is equally possible that a 1,000-year-old person would be someone who remembers almost nothing from their first 800 years, someone who is, in a very real sense, a stranger to their own past. And if you cannot remember who you were, are you still the same person? That question, more than any economic or demographic concern, might be the deepest challenge of extreme longevity, because it asks not whether the body can survive, but whether the self can. Now think about relationships. Think about love. In a normal human life, the people you care about are with you for decades. You grow up with your parents, lose them eventually, and that loss, however painful, is part of the natural order. You find a partner, you build a life, you grow old together, and in the end, one of you goes first, and the other follows not long after. The arc is finite, and that finiteness is what gives it weight. Now stretch that across 1,000 years. Your parents, if they too are long-lived, they are with you for centuries. That sounds beautiful, until you realize that the concept of a generational bond loses its meaning. There is no passing of the torch because the torch never moves. Your children, if you are allowed to have them, grow up and then simply continue, century after century, alongside you. The natural rhythm of human life, the succession of generations, the grief that comes with loss, all of it dissolves. And what about romantic love? In a 1,000-year life, the idea of a lifelong partnership, takes on an entirely new dimension. Can you stay with one person for 800 years? Maybe some could. But human psychology is not built for permanence. People change. Interests shift. The person you were at 25 is a stranger to the person you are at 60. Now imagine the gap between the person you are at 25 and the person you are at 450. A partnership that lasted a few decades in the old world would need to survive across geological stretches of personal transformation. Some relationships might endure, others would fracture and reform again and again, like tectonic plates. You might have dozens of great loves, each one a chapter, each one ending in something that feels like death, even though no one dies. And then there is the grief, because even in a world of extreme longevity, people would still die. Accidents would happen, violence would happen. These, until it is fully conquered, would happen. And when someone dies after 600 years of shared life, the grief would be almost incomprehensible. Not the loss of a few decades, the loss of centuries, the loss of an entire era of your existence, gone in an instant. We are not built for that kind of loss. No human culture, no psychological framework, no philosophy has ever prepared us to mourn someone we have known for 500 years. The weight of it could crush a person. And yet, in a 1,000-year life, it would happen again and again and again. This brings us to the most philosophical problem of all: identity. Who are you really after 500 years? Right now, your identity is a relatively stable thing. You have a name, a set of memories, a personality shaped by your experiences, and a sense of continuity that ties it all together. You are the same person you were 10 years ago, more or less, because enough of the threads remain unbroken. But over 500 years, every single one of those threads would be replaced. Your memories would shift and fade. Your personality would be reshaped by centuries of experience that no current human can comprehend. Your values would change as the world around you changed so drastically that the moral framework of your youth became a museum piece. You might start life as a deeply religious person in a world of faith, and 500 years later, find yourself in a secular, post-human culture that would be unrecognizable to your younger self. Are you still the same person? Legally, perhaps. Biologically, your cells would have been replaced many times over, but the pattern would persist. But psychologically, the 25-year-old you and the 500-year-old you would share almost nothing except a name and a body. This is not a minor philosophical puzzle. It is a crisis of selfhood. If you live for 1,000 years, you would essentially live multiple distinct lives within a single continuous body. Each one would have its own identity, its own values, its own friendships and careers and passions, and each one would eventually give way to the next, like seasons that last a century each. You might look back at who you were at 50 and feel the same disconnection you feel when you look at a photograph of yourself as a toddler. That was you, but also it was not. Now imagine that distance multiplied 100-fold. The person you were at 25 would be so remote, so alien, that you might struggle to even understand their decisions. Why did you love who you loved? Why did you believe what you believed? The answers would feel like reading the diary of a stranger. And yet, you would carry that stranger inside you for the rest of your very long life. The question of whether a 1,000-year-old person is one person or many wearing the same skin in sequence is not answerable by current psychology. It is a question that can only be answered by living it. And until someone does, we are guessing. Now let us talk about power. Because in a world of 1,000-year-olds, the political and social structures we take for granted would be completely upended. Today, society is organized around generations. Older people hold wealth and influence. Younger people bring energy and new ideas. Eventually, the old pass on, and the young take their place. It is not always smooth. It is not always fair, but it is a system that moves, that cycles, that prevents stagnation. Death, in this sense, is the engine of social renewal. Now remove that engine. Imagine a world where the people in power never leave. Not because they are dictators, but because they simply do not die. A CEO who is 300 years old would have accumulated more experience, more connections, and more wealth than any newcomer could match. A political leader with 5 centuries of institutional knowledge would be almost impossible to dislodge, not through force, but through sheer gravitational pull. The young, and in this world, young means anyone under 200, would find themselves perpetually at the bottom of a hierarchy with no natural exit. Promotions would not come because the people above them never retire. Political office would become a near-permanent possession. Innovation might slow because the people making decisions are the ones who made them 400 years ago. And their mental models, however extensive, are rooted in a world that no longer exists. This is not speculation. We already see versions of this problem. Entrenched power, gerontocracy, the slow turnover of leadership. Now amplify that by a factor of 10. Society would need to reinvent its entire approach to governance. Term limits would need to be radical, perhaps measured in decades rather than years. Wealth would need to be cycled, redistributed, or capped, because otherwise it would concentrate so violently that the concept of a middle class would become meaningless. Social mobility. The idea that a young person can rise through merit and effort would be under existential threat. And here is the darkest possibility. In a world where the old never die, the young might eventually be seen as a threat, a nuisance, a category of people who want what the ancients already have and will not give up. The tension between the young and the impossibly old could become the defining conflict of such a society. Not rich against poor, not one nation against another, but the young against the ancient. And that is a conflict no one has ever had to navigate before, because no one has ever lived long enough to create it. Let us now turn inward, because beyond economics, beyond population, beyond politics, there is a question that is almost never asked in the longevity debate. And it might be the most important one of all. What does it feel like to live for 1,000 years? We assume more life is better, more time, more experiences, more joy. But psychologists who study human happiness have long known that novelty is a core driver of satisfaction. The first time you see the ocean, it takes your breath away. The 100th time, it is just the ocean. The first time you fall in love, it feels like the world is being reborn around you. By the 10th time, you know the shape of it. By the 50th, what is left? Over 1,000 years, you would exhaust the catalog of human experiences many times over. You would have every possible career, every type of relationship, every flavor of adventure and failure and success. And then you would start over and over and over. The risk is not physical exhaustion. It is existential exhaustion, a weariness of the soul that no medical technology can address. We already see this in compressed form. People who live long, full lives sometimes reach a point where they feel they have done enough, seen enough, been enough. They feel ready to go. Now imagine that feeling, arriving at age 400 with 600 years still ahead of you. There is no treatment for that, no pill, no gene therapy, because it is not a malfunction. It is the natural response of a mind that has simply had enough. Boredom in a 1,000-year life becomes an existential threat. Not the boredom of a dull afternoon, but the boredom of someone who has watched the sun set hundreds of thousands of times and can no longer find surprise in anything. Some people might thrive. There are those whose curiosity is inexhaustible, who would spend 10 lifetimes learning and exploring and creating. But even they would face the gradual erosion of meaning that comes when nothing is new, nothing is rare, and nothing is finite. Because here is the paradox, the heart of extreme longevity. The thing that makes life precious is its scarcity. The fact that it ends is what gives every moment its weight. Remove the ending, and you do not just remove the grief, you remove the gravity. A 1,000-year life might be the most profound achievement in human history, or it might be the slowest, most luxurious form of suffocation ever devised. And the terrifying truth is, we will not know which until it is too late to undo. And then there is the scenario nobody wants to talk about, the one that keeps ethicists awake at night. What if extreme longevity is not equally distributed? History tells us that every major technological leap arrives first to the wealthy, the powerful, the connected. Antibiotics, vaccines, gene therapy, organ transplantation. Each one, in its earliest days, was available only to those who could afford it, or those who lived in the right part of the world. Now imagine a treatment that grants centuries of additional life. Who gets it first? The billionaires, the political elites, the citizens of the wealthiest nations. And who does not? Everyone else. For the first time in human history, the gap between the haves and the have-nots would not be measured in money or comfort. It would be measured in time itself, in literal years of existence. Imagine a world where the rich live for 1,000 years, while the poor still die at 70, where the elites accumulate not just wealth, but lifetimes of it, while the rest of humanity burns through its brief candle and vanishes. That is not inequality. That is a divergence of species. Over enough time, the long-lived and the short-lived would become two entirely different populations, with no shared experience, no common frame of reference, no possibility of mutual understanding. The ancient wealthy would view the short-lived poor the way we view mayflies, here for a moment, then gone. And the short-lived would view the ancients with something beyond envy, something closer to religious awe or revolutionary fury. This is the most dangerous possible outcome of extreme longevity. Not overpopulation, not memory loss, not boredom, but the creation of a permanent, unbridgeable, biological underclass. A world where death itself becomes a luxury that some can afford to postpone and others cannot. If that future arrives, the social contract that holds civilization together would not just crack, it would disintegrate, and the consequences would make every revolution in history look like a polite disagreement. Any honest conversation about living to 1,000 must include this possibility, because the technology will not wait for us to have the ethics ready. It never does. So let us come back to where we started. You wake up on your 1,000th birthday. You have seen Mars become a second home. You have watched languages die and new ones born. You have loved dozens of people and lost most of them. You barely remember your first century. You have been a scientist, a farmer, a musician, a philosopher, a soldier, a teacher. You have been versions of yourself that your 20-year-old self would not recognize or understand. And you are tired. Not in your body, which has been maintained and repaired and rebuilt 1,000 times, in your soul, whatever that word means, in a world that has mapped every circuit of the brain. You are tired, and you are still here. Was it worth it? That is the question that no thought experiment can answer, because the answer depends on a kind of experience no human has ever had. We can model the economics. We can predict the population curves. We can speculate about memory and identity and social structure, but we cannot know what it feels like to stand at the end of a millennium and look back at a life so long that its beginning is lost in fog. What we can say is this: extreme longevity would not just extend human life, it would fundamentally transform what human life is. It would dissolve the structures that have organized us since the beginning: retirement, generational succession, the scarcity that gives meaning to our moments. It would create problems we have no framework to solve, and possibilities we have no imagination to fully grasp. It would be the greatest achievement in the history of our species, and potentially the most destabilizing force we have ever unleashed upon ourselves. And it may be coming, whether we are ready or not. So the real question is not whether we can live to 1,000. Science is already whispering that we might. The real question is whether we should. Whether 1,000 years is a gift or a sentence. And the most honest answer, the only honest answer, is that we do not know. Not yet. And we will not know until the first person crosses that line, turns around, and tells us what they found on the other side. The question is whether, by then, it will still be possible to turn back. Because some doors, once opened, do not close. And this might be the biggest door humanity has ever built. The question is not whether we have the key. The question is whether we are prepared for what waits behind it. Because the future of 1,000-year life is not just longer. It is deeper, stranger, heavier, and more unknown than anything we have ever dared to imagine. And it may be closer than any of us think.